Imagine waking up at 3 a.m. to a muffled thud in the next room. Instantly, your brain enters a state of high alert emergency. This is the midnight caregiving crisis, a recurring neurological event where your body stays braced for a catastrophe that could happen at any hour. In the U.S., nearly 23% of adults are simultaneously raising children and supporting an aging parent. Beyond the time commitment, these individuals face a massive financial drain, spending an average of $10,000 a year in out-of-pocket caregiving costs. Living in this dual role creates role strain, a constant psychological friction. It's the feeling of being pulled in two directions, where time managing a parent's medical decline is stolen from the emotional needs of your children. This level of exhaustion is a structural collapse of your internal resources. When the financial weight of $10,000 meets the emotional friction of dual-role caregiving, it creates a state of chronic depletion that standard stress management can no longer resolve. Many caregivers resist taking a break because of the guilt paradox. We have been conditioned to believe that personal rest is equivalent to familial abandonment, making the act of self-preservation feel like a moral failure. We often measure our reality against an idealized cultural standard, a tranquil, perfect family life, similar to this Norman Rockwell illustration. This historical fantasy creates an impossible bar that keeps modern caregivers trapped in a cycle of perceived incompetence. The physiological result is a state called hypervigilance. The caregiver's sympathetic nervous system, the network that controls our fight-or-flight response, becomes permanently locked in an active state. You might recognize this as sleeping with one ear open. Even when the house is quiet, the brain remains hyper-alert for a parent falling or a child's distress. This constant arousal floods the system with cortisol and over time can actually destroy brain cells, leading to memory loss and cognitive decline. Guilt acts as a biological barrier to recovery. Because the mind refuses to allow the body to rest, a temporary stressor transforms into a chronic, life-threatening physical trauma. To stop this decline, you must move past simple relaxation. You have to use somatic regulation, tactical tools designed to manually reset your biology and pull your nervous system out of a fight-or-flight loop. This animation demonstrates heart coherence, a technique used to stabilize the body's anxiety response. By inhaling for 5 seconds and exhaling for 5 seconds, you signal safety to your nervous system and clear the mental chaos. Your brain also needs a clear shutdown ritual to mark the end of your caregiving shift. Physically changing your clothes or tidying a specific workspace acts as a psychological bridge, allowing the amygdala to downshift from monitoring threats to restorative rest. Using principles from cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, sleep must be reframed as a non-negotiable safety protocol. Even when you can't fall asleep, you can ritualize rest by committing to physical stillness in a dark, quiet room. Treating rest as a duty rather than a luxury is the first requirement for stopping the cognitive erosion caused by chronic hypervigilance. Beyond the body, the caregiving environment requires structural guardrails. To protect your remaining energy, you must establish rigid boundaries that define exactly what you will and will not handle. This matrix shows the three-list method, a framework designed to prevent decision fatigue. The first column is for tasks only you can execute. The second identifies everything outsourced to a spouse or professional. The final column establishes boundaries. What I will not do. We have to move past the lone hero myth, the belief that you must handle everything yourself to prove your love. Isolation only accelerates burnout. Reaching out for help is a requirement for survival. This is the logo for the Alzheimer's Association, which provides expert guidance for dementia-specific challenges. Tapping into external networks like this, or asynchronous digital communities, provides the reality check teams necessary to combat caregiver guilt. Intentionally shifting tasks to this wider village transforms caregiving from a solo mission of martyrdom into a sustainable managed team effort. This leads to the most important shift, moving away from the martyrdom model where suffering is seen as a proxy for love. Instead, we must adopt a stewardship model. This means viewing your own physical and mental health as the family unit's most valuable asset, one that must be protected at all costs to ensure everyone else survives. You are allowed to be exhausted, you are allowed to be frustrated, and you are allowed to enforce strict boundaries to protect your identity outside of your role as a caregiver. Radical self-preservation is the only foundation that allows you to survive the sandwich squeeze. By protecting yourself, you maintain the strength required to sustainably care for the generations relying on you. Let me ask you something. Do you ever feel stretched impossibly thin, like you're being pulled in a million different directions all at once? One minute you're dealing with teenage drama, and the next you're on the phone trying to schedule your parents' next doctor's appointment. And somewhere in that chaotic whirlwind, you're supposed to have a career, be a partner, and maybe, just maybe, find one single quiet moment for yourself. If you're nodding your head right now, I need you to really hear this. You are so not alone. In fact, you're part of a massive demographic that no one really talks about. Get this, nearly half, a staggering 47% of adults in their 40s and 50s are caught in this exact same squeeze. So that feeling of being completely overwhelmed, it isn't some personal failure, it's a full-blown societal phenomenon. And yeah, it actually has a name, the sandwich generation. In this explainer, we are going deep into this modern squeeze. But look, this isn't just about defining a problem. This is a survival guide, a toolkit for one of the most demanding and, frankly, invisible roles in modern life. That feeling you have is so much more than just being tired. It is the weight of a huge demographic shift. It's the life of, say, Sarah, a 48-year-old manager, taking a work call from her car in the parking lot of her dad's nursing home, right after dropping her son off at practice. It's 1,000 of those tiny, impossible moments. This isn't just a scheduling issue, it's a life issue. So here's my promise to you. By the end of this, you're going to understand the immense pressure you're under. You'll be able to spot the dangerous warning signs of burnout. And most importantly, you will walk away with a practical, actionable toolkit to start reclaiming your time, your energy, and your life. Okay, so let's get into it. We've broken this down into 4 key parts. First, we'll define the caregiving squeeze and really see just how big this thing has gotten. Then, we're going to get serious about decoding caregiver burnout. After that, we'll arm you with your first line of defense. These are internal strategies you can use right away. And finally, we'll show you how to start finding your support system, because you absolutely don't have to do this alone. So let's kick things off with part 1, the caregiving squeeze. What exactly are we talking about here? And why does it feel so much harder today than it seemed to be for our parents' generation? You know, this term actually goes all the way back to 1981, coined by a social worker named Dorothy Miller. The sandwich generation refers to adults who are literally sandwiched between 2 huge caregiving roles. They're caring for their aging parents while also raising their own kids. It's a really simple definition for an unbelievably complex reality. A daily juggling act of medication schedules and soccer schedules, of giving emotional support to a parent who's aging and a teenager who's facing exams. And look, this isn't some tiny niche experience anymore. Today, almost a quarter of all adults in the US are in this group. But let's zoom in here, because if you look at people in their 40s, that number just explodes to 54%. Over half are living this day in and day out. And it's not just about little kids. 29% are raising a child under 18 while also helping a parent. But here's the really crucial point. This weight is not shared equally. An incredible 66%, 2/3 of these unpaid caregivers, are women. And this comes from these old, deep-seated ideas about caregiving, where women are just often expected to do most of the physical and, the emotional labor. All the planning, the worrying, the organizing that really holds a family together. But here's the thing. The sandwich of 1981 is not the sandwich of today. Huge social and economic shifts have turned this into what some experts are now calling the double whopper. The original idea was pretty simple. You care for your young kids and your aging parents. While the modern version, you might be caring for your kids, your parents, and your grandparents, all because people are living longer, so more generations are alive at once. Then, on the other side of that sandwich, your adult kids often still need a ton of financial and emotional support well into their 20s, just thanks to this tough economy. It all boils down to this. Care periods are now way, way longer. People are living longer with chronic illnesses, which means caregiving isn't a sprint anymore. It's a marathon that can last a decade or even more. And all of this pressure, it leads to a very specific kind of exhaustion. It's perfectly captured in this quote. There's a kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. This isn't just being sleepy after a long day. It is a bone-deep, soul-level weariness that comes from being the constant mental switchboard for your entire family, always juggling everyone else's needs, their fears, and their schedules, usually at the expense of your own. If that quote is hitting a little too close to home for you, let us know by hitting that like button. It's just a simple way to acknowledge that you're part of this massive community of people who get it. And be sure to subscribe, because we're here to give you the tools you need to navigate all of this. Okay, so you get the squeeze now. But what happens when that constant grinding pressure starts to boil over into something way more dangerous? Well, we're about to decode the actual clinical warning signs of burnout and the silent toll it's taking on your body. You're not going to want to miss this next part. All right, let's get into part 2, decoding caregiver burnout. This is the really dangerous, but honestly pretty predictable result of all that sustained pressure without enough support. First things first, let's be crystal clear. Burnout is not just stress. Stress is when you feel like you have too much to do. Burnout is when you feel like you have nothing left to give. I want you to think of it like a phone battery. Stress drains your battery, but you can plug it in and recharge it overnight. Burnout is when the battery itself is damaged and it just can't hold a charge anymore. It's this state of chronic exhaustion that happens when the demands of your role just completely overwhelm your ability to cope, when your own well of energy and patience has just run completely dry. So let's take a closer look at this because burnout shows up in really specific clinical ways. First, there's emotional exhaustion, that constant fatigue we talked about, feeling sad, hopeless, maybe crying a lot more than you used to. Second, and this one is really tough to admit, is depersonalization. This is when you start to feel cynical or detached or even resentful toward the person you're caring for. It's not because you're a bad person. It's a defense mechanism against overwhelming emotional pain, but it is a major red flag. Third is reduced fulfillment, where you feel like nothing you do makes a difference or is good enough. And finally, look at these physical symptoms: chronic headaches, stomach problems, insomnia, heart palpitations. These are not all in your head. This is your body physically screaming for help. And there's an actual biological reason for all of this. It's called hypervigilance. Your nervous system literally gets stuck in go mode. Your fight or flight response is just always on. It's that feeling of sleeping with one ear open, always listening for a parent to fall or a child who needs you. This constant state of alert just floods your body with stress hormones like cortisol, and it stops your brain from getting the deep, restorative sleep it needs to repair itself. Over time, this isn't just tiring. It physically changes your body and it increases your risk for serious health problems like heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. This isn't just a feeling, it's a physiological crisis. So knowing the problem is one thing, but how do you actually start to fight back? This is where we shift from the problem to your power. Coming up, we're giving you your very first line of defense, practical, powerful tools you can start using today to reclaim your own well-being. All right, let's pivot. Part 3, your first line of defense. These are internal strategies, things you can do for immediate self-preservation. This is where you start taking your power back. The single most critical tool you have is setting healthy boundaries. Let's break down how to do it. 1. Acknowledge your needs. Those feelings of anger or resentment, they're not bad things. They are vital signals, like a smoke alarm telling you a boundary has been crossed. 2. Be clear and realistic. Just communicate your limits honestly and calmly. 3. Use I statements. Instead of saying, "You are so demanding," which just feels like an attack, you frame it around your needs. "I feel overwhelmed when I have to manage appointments on short notice." 4. Learn to say no. For so many of us, this is the hardest one. But saying no isn't selfish. It's essential for survival. It shows you know your limits. And 5. Be firm but flexible. You gotta stand by your boundaries, but also understand that as things change, you might need to talk and adjust them. I know that setting boundaries can sound kind of vague, so here are some actual ready-to-use scripts. For your teenager who needs help the second you walk in the door, I am happy to help you with your project after I've had 30 minutes to decompress. This teaches them patience, and it honors your need for a minute. For an aging parent, I can take you shopping on Tuesday or on Thursday. Which day works better for you? The psychology here is just brilliant. It gives them a choice, which lets them feel in control, but it protects your schedule. And please don't forget a boundary for yourself. I need 20 minutes to eat my meal in quiet to recharge. These little scripts can be total game changers. And I really want to hear from you on this. Let us know in the comments below. What's the hardest part about setting boundaries for you? Is it the guilt? The fear of how they react? Sharing your experience really helps everyone in this community realize they're not the only ones struggling with this. Boundaries are fantastic for the big picture. But what about when you're right in the middle of a stressful moment? When you can feel your anxiety just skyrocketing? You need an emergency tool you can use right then and there. And that tool is mindfulness. Now, before you think you don't have time to meditate on a cushion for an hour, just hear me out. Mindfulness is simply the practice of being aware of the present moment without judgment. And that last part is so key. It means noticing your stress without beating yourself up for feeling it. And the best part? You can do it in as little as 30 seconds, anywhere, anytime. In your car, in a waiting room, or in the bathroom with the door locked for just 1 minute. Let's look at some super quick resets. Got 30 seconds? Try the Caregiver's breathing reset. Just stop, close your eyes, and take 5 slow, deep breaths. Just focus on the feeling of the air coming in and going out. That's it. Got a minute? Use the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique. When your mind is just racing, name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can physically feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This is such a powerful way to pull your brain out of an anxiety spiral and back into the present moment. And if you have 3 minutes, try the self-compassion pause. Place a hand on your heart, acknowledge that this is a hard moment, and just offer yourself the same kindness you'd give to a friend. All right, let's move into our final section, finding your support system. Because the most important boundary of all is recognizing that you cannot, and you absolutely should not, have to do all of this alone. One of the biggest things that fuels burnout is isolation. That feeling that nobody really gets what you're going through. But you are way more connected than you think. Online communities can be an absolute lifeline, a place to vent and get advice at 2 in the morning. The Caregiver Action Network has a free help desk. AARP's Facebook group has thousands of members sharing tips. Reddit communities like r/caregiver support are known for being super welcoming. And there are specialized groups like Working Daughter specifically for women trying to balance a career with caregiving. You can find your people out there. And sometimes you need more specialized help. If you're dealing with dementia, the Alzheimer's Association is just invaluable. And I really want to highlight the Eldercare Locator. It's a public service that can connect you to real, local, in-person services in your area. Things like meal delivery or adult day programs, or most importantly, respite care, which gives you a desperately needed break. Help is out there for every possible situation. Finding the right resource can be a real turning point. If you appreciate us doing the research to bring you these kinds of tools, the best way to support us is just to subscribe and turn on your notifications. We're always creating these deep dive explainers to help you navigate life's toughest challenges, and we really don't want you to miss the next one. So let's start to wrap this up with a really powerful idea. We've been taught to see self-care as selfish, especially when someone we love is hurting. I want you to completely reframe that with this quote. The care you give to yourself is the care you give to your loved one. Think about the oxygen mask on an airplane. They always tell you to put yours on first before helping anyone else. Why? Because if you pass out, you're no help to anybody. When you are burnt out and resentful, you cannot provide good care. When you protect your own well-being, you're preserving your ability to show up with patience and with love. Self-care isn't selfish. It's the foundation of sustainable caregiving. So I want to leave you with one last actionable question. Just looking at your life right now, what is one small boundary you can set this week to protect your well-being? It doesn't have to be a huge thing. In fact, it's better if it's not. Maybe it's just taking 10 minutes to drink your coffee in silence before the house wakes up. Maybe it's saying no, it's a one tiny non-essential request. What's it going to be? You are not failing. You are doing an impossible job with too little support. The goal isn't to suddenly fix everything. The goal is to start with one small change. And for more guides to help you navigate life's biggest challenges, make sure you're subscribed. We'll see you in the next explainer. Remember, the goal isn't to be a perfect caregiver, it's to be a present and preserved one.